Time to talk about the one Souls game I haven't given coverage to, a day late and $1 short at this point, but I feel like it's got to be done. As a big fan of the Souls games, it feels almost like I'm doing the franchise a disservice if I fail to provide some love to where it all began. Dark Souls. Well, more specifically Dark Souls Remastered in this case, because it's the one of the two I play the most, but though I've played both and I can vouch that Dark Souls Remastered is faithful to the original, so that's what we're going with. Ironically, Dark Souls was my third Souls game, starting with Dark Souls 3 in 2016, then going to Dark Souls 2 in 2017, and into Dark Souls Remastered shortly following its launch day. You might ask what possessed me to play the trilogy backwards. Well, I picked up Dark Souls 3 on a whim, so it wasn't intentional. I actually didn't expect to get drawn in as much as I did. I heard the legends of its difficulty and it made me anxious to play it. I think 3 was a good starting point though. To me, it's the most forgiving and accessible to new players. Anyway, Dark Souls 1, that's what we're here to talk about. I've already reviewed Dark Souls 3, you can look at it here. Here's a thing, there's a link in the description. That was back when I was called Bored Gamer. I probably should mention that. In Dark Souls, you play as an undead locked away in the Northern Undead Asylum. You hear of a prophecy that talks of a chosen undead travelling to the land of the Lords to link the fire and preserve the world. Given that the storyteller is inches from death and you've got nothing better to do, you take up this mantle and travel to Lordran to do the very thing. The game doesn't explain much off the bat. You're treated to a cool opening cutscene that we'll discuss in detail later. All you really know is that you're in the Age of Fire and the age is coming to an end. You're the one destined to stop it if you believe what you are told, and this entire adventure is focused on you slaying the Lords that built this world. Using their souls, you'll gain strength until you're finally powerful enough to take over Lord Gwyn, the king of the gods and the one who linked the fire before you. Dark Souls lore is rich and deep, too much for a single YouTube video. This is just a rough outline of what's going on. We will discuss it a little bit more later though, so don't worry. The game is a third-person hack-and-slash action RPG, but it does differ significantly from the usual traits of an RPG. You probably know that by now, but just in case you don't, I'm going to go through it. There's no party for starters, just you and whatever bit of metal you use to kill things. That's the only thing you can rely on. You can play with friends online, but otherwise you'll be going it alone. You choose a class, but the class dictates only your starting level and gear. From there you can branch out to do whatever you please. Want to be a great sword-wielding knight who can shoot fire? Go for it. A katana-wielding assassin with holy lightning prayers? You bet. A naked twit with a stick? It's your choice. I love this approach. It gives the player a lot of freedom in how they progress and really lets you build your character. There are no quest markers or maps, nothing to really affirm that you're going the right way until you've already gone too far, and the only way to get from A to B is with long treks filled with murder. Most of your victims are also undead, many hollow husks of their former selves. It's almost a mercy to cut them down. It's also fun. Whilst you might be the chosen undead, and whilst some NPCs might recognise this in dialogue, you are just a wimpy human in a world that really isn't for your kind. Many of the enemies are much bigger than you, and many of the structures are designed around this. It does a great job of conveying where humanity lies in the food chain in the world of Dark Souls. As to the first areas, you've got the Undead Asylum and the Undead Burg, which hold undead humans, weirdly enough. Both are decrepit and nasty places, whilst later, in the City of the Gods, and Londo is beautiful and polished and marble and shiny. Or at least it is from afar. Get close enough and you'll see what's really going on, but again, we're going to discuss this later. For the most part, the areas in Dark Souls are really well designed with clever enemy placement and useful treasure. I also love how interconnected the world is. You can pretty much walk from heaven above to hell below. Of course, you better pack some snacks and get a sick note because it's going to take you a while. But actually, I need to make a bit of a correction. Whilst you can walk down to the depths of the earth and witness Lost Izalith, which is pretty much just hell and full of lava and demons, the heavenly city of Londo is high above and walled off. It is possible to get in and out, but you need the help of these winged nutters which serve the gods. And that extra step required kind of sends a clear message to the player that those within the city see themselves as above you. Sorry, this section was supposed to be about gameplay, wasn't it? We'll talk about the lore later. Again, third-person hack and slash. The combat is designed around one-on-one battles, though there are often multiple enemies, which requires the player to lure them out one by one to deal with them. It's rarely a good idea to engage multiple targets unless you're sure you can take them all out in one go. Even basic enemies like rats and dogs can easily overwhelm you if you're not careful. Unless you've got a big sweeping weapon or a long polearm, it's probably best that you don't try to take them on more than one at a time. It can be a bit tedious sometimes, but I find the combat itself is fun enough to compensate. There is a lot of satisfaction to be had in defeating foe after foe, absorbing their souls for later use. Souls in the game are your currency. They let you buy things and level up at checkpoints, which is a grand feature that I really wish was in Dark Souls 2 and 3. It's much less faffing about to just pop back to your checkpoint to do your level up, rather than having to seek out the one NPC in the game that can do it for you. Also, with some wise investments, you can do blacksmith stuff at your bonfire and store things, which is nice. Later on, you gain the ability to teleport between bonfires, a feature that I personally think would have served better of being included sooner, because whilst I like the sense of adventure the game has, it can be annoying if you really need items and the merchant is half a continent away, or if you forget to buy the blacksmith stuff and have to go back and forth several times just to upgrade yourself, or if you accidentally went the wrong way and now have to backtrack through miles of hostile terrain. When I say teleport between bonfires, I mean only select ones. Some areas don't even have one, so this feature, lovely as it is still taking the piss. That's something to say actually. Some areas don't even have the vital life-saving checkpoints you need, and are just long slogs for annoyance. An innovation that was only really really introduced in Dark Souls 3 is shortcuts. Levels having a short route back to the bonfire unlocks usually after you've explored the rest of the level. The fact that Dark Souls 1 doesn't really have these can be a problem, because if you're really struggling with a hard boss, then if you die, you've got to go through most of the area again just to get to the bloody thing. And chances are, if you're doing this multiple times, you'll get frustrated, get killed on the way back to the boss, and lose all your souls, because you drop your souls when you die, and if you don't get them back, they're gone for good. And as enemies respawn when you die, it could be lethal to the game's enjoyment. I used to defend this, but now I wonder why. It can be bloody annoying to get killed by a boss, be on your way back, getting more and more frustrated, and then only die to a basic enemy and lose all your souls. The new Londo Ruins are the worst for this, I feel, at least in my experience. The nearest checkpoints to this area are both behind lifts on either side of the area. One leads through a path filled with ghosts that you cannot hurt unless you acquire specific items that the game never tells you about. The other takes you through a valley of lightning-breathing dragons that'll take way too long to kill. Then you've got to make it through the ruins themselves to get to the boss room, and the boss arena's huge and takes ages to traverse. All the while the boss is shooting magic at you that does huge amounts of damage. It's just annoying. So yeah, the remaster could have done more. They could have put more checkpoints in, or maybe just stop taking the piss with certain areas of design. Throw a ladder in occasionally, dude. Just let us have a shortcut back to the boss, for Christ's sake. There are some other areas that annoy, Lost Isoleth being mostly just an open plain of lava with dragon butts. It's not exactly creative, and they're just random demons copy-pasted everywhere. It's particularly boring to explore, which is a shame because it's got some great lore behind the area. There's also the Crystal Cave with its invisible platforms, over sheer drops, which cause my anxiety to do backflips. However, I don't want to sound too negative, because despite some of the levels being pants and the fact that the Bed of Chaos exists, the game is still really good. I love Dark Souls. The level design is mostly fantastic, enemies are fun to fight, the atmosphere and variation on locales is the tops, but for me what really makes Dark Souls is the narrative. One can be forgiven for missing a lot of it because it isn't quite as in your face as it is with some games. See, the game is about you working to link the fire which fuels the world. The founder of this Age of Fire, Lord Gwyn, sacrificed himself long ago when the fire began to fade. He ignited his own soul and has been burning for aeons, but now he is too fading like the flame, and a new champion must take his place. Doing this will restore the light and continues the Age of Fire, an age where the gods are in charge and humanity is trodden under boot. But this age was not meant to last. I mentioned the introduction cutscene earlier, let's have a look at it now. It depicts Lord Gwyn and 3 other beings discovering the fire and finding souls within the flame that awarded them great power. We see them waging a massive war on the dragons that once ruled the earth in the Age of Ancients. It was an act of flagrant genocide that wiped dragons off the face of the planet. Almost. I mean, some dragons survived, we see dragons later, but the point is they no longer ruled. The gods ruled now. Horrific as this is, this was always meant to happen. The Age of Ancients was meant to come to an end, and to be replaced by the Age of Fire. And the Age of Fire itself was also meant to end. One day it would fade to an Age of Dark. Gwyn and his allies feared the Age of Dark. They fear it's coming because with it, they lose the world they created as humans rise to take their rightful place. Also, I want to mention it's an age that might go by another name, the Age of Man. In the minds of these gods, the Age of Fire must be prolonged if they are to remain in power. For me, that's not a good ending for the game. Why is it not a good ending, you might ask me? Well, because you play as a human, undead sure, but human all the same, and you are being heavily encouraged to link the fire, something that goes against humanity's dark nature and robs them of their future. I don't know if the Age of Dark will be a good thing, I really don't, but I believe it's better to try for it, especially when you consider one little fact. The world is dark right now. It's already dark. When you arrive at the City of the Gods, Anor Londo, you see the shining sun and divine lights which contrast against the grey skies and growing darkness below. When you look closer though, you see the marks of age and eventually you discover the truth. Bit of a spoiler warning here, chances are you'll already know this bit, but I'll give you a few seconds to make yourself scarce if you don't want it to be spoiled. Just skip to the end or something. Londo is dark. The world isn't so much ending, more that it already has ended. The light we see is but an illusion. Even the enticing Guinevere who greets us once we've beaten the bosses of the area is nothing but a trick with the light. An image projected by the only remaining member of the royal family out of a desperate fear of the dark to continue guiding the undead to do the thing that they want them to do, i.e. link the fire. As I said, the world isn't ending, it has ended. The Age of Fire is over, we're at the end of it. It's already done, and even now linking the flame offers little but a temporary stave of execution. And to me that's why the Age of Fire is a bad ending. The good ending in my mind is one where you let this new age take root. Sure, it probably won't be perfect, but you can't fight change forever. Change on its own isn't necessarily good or bad, you just gotta see where it goes, and again, to me that just makes the most sense. Obviously not everyone shares his opinion. But this narrative, this to me is what makes Dark Souls. It's so rich and deep and it really makes you think. I can't believe I forgot to mention the bosses up until now actually, aside from 2 of them just being lazy repeats of the first boss, and some of the early game bosses being recycled as enemies later, they're mostly great. They're unique, giant monsters and powerful beings. Like with the enemies though, for some of them it does look like killing them is doing them a service. Some of them are ancient monsters barely holding onto their sanity, some of them are implied to be in massive amounts of pain for a long time. There is one I particularly hate, the Bed of Chaos, which I mentioned very, very, very briefly earlier, which I consider one of the worst designed bosses I've ever seen, which is a shame because its lore is fantastic. The Bed of Chaos was the Witch of Islov. She was one of the founders of this age. She desperately tried to recreate the fire when it started fading and, well, in her hubris, turned into the Bed of Chaos, which looks horrific, and it's heavily implied that she's been suffering for nearly 1,000 years. No matter what faults the game has, I will always love it. Dark Souls is fantastic, and I will gladly die upon this hill. So the obvious question of whether or not do I recommend Dark Souls, it's obviously gonna be a yes. Whilst it has its issues, the game is one of the closest things I've seen to a masterpiece. I'll use the word as much as I hate it. I see a lot of gamers use this and it's lost a lot of its meaning. Dark Souls is easily one of my favourite franchises of all time. Each game has so much to offer and has had me hooked for ages. They're all fantastic and true works of art. If you haven't already, give Dark Souls a go. Or do it again, because Dark Souls is always worth replaying. I think that's a good place to leave it. Oh, also, before I forget, next week I'm busy, so there will not be a review. If I find time, there might be a first impressions of something. We'll see what happens. I won't make any promises. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out the other content available on the channel, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content. You can also support the channel on Patreon from as little as £1 a month. Check out the link in the description. Thanks in advance, and we'll see you next time.